Okay, kids, it's time for another episode of the Fueled by Weird podcast, the only podcast with so many Bayou puns, but I'm just too swamped to share all of them. I'm Chris Daly, and today I have the pleasure of chatting once again with Jonathan Hedrick. Jonathan, how's it going, man?
Good. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing good. All right, so you've been here before, so you kind of know what I like to do is to kick things off. We like to do a little bit of an icebreaker question.
Hmm.
So today's icebreaker question: what does your name mean? So is it
Oh,
a hand-me-down name? Is there kind of a cool story where your parents came up with the name Jonathan? Tell me how.
yeah, that's a good question. Well, so the biblical meaning of Jonathan is Hebrew for gift from God. So
Okay.
I like to joke that it's non-refundable, non-returnable gift, whether you like it or not. It's like one of those gifts when someone gives you a poster for Christmas or your birthday. Like, great, now I have to buy a frame. um, but reason why my mother named me Jonathan is because my grandfather and her brother, my uncle, are both named John, John. So she wanted to kind of honor them by giving me a spin-off name of John. So that's where that came from.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Mine's kind of a cool story that I like to tell. My parents, when I was getting ready to be brought into the world, they could not think of what to call me.
Mhm.
So they just happened to, and I wish I knew more of the story.
Mhm.
But I guess they went to a vampire movie where it
Oh.
was one of those vampire movies starring the late great Christopher Lee.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah.
they were a big fan of him. And after the movie, they decided that that was just going to be my name. So they took his entire name and plugged
Yeah.
on my last name, and that's how they
Oh,
came up with my name. So I was quite literally named after the actor Christopher Lee. And it's
that's
not,
cool.
a lot of people think, oh, so the Christopher. I'm like, no, like Christopher Lee. That's
Yeah.
his last name is my middle name. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
kind of a cool namesake, I thought.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that could be a lot worse. I mean,
That's true.
yeah. And yeah, Christopher Lee, rest in peace. He's been in a lot of my favorite movies. Yeah, there's all the Draculas and Count Dooku, if I'm not mistaken, from the Star Wars
Yeah,
prequels.
Star Wars, Lord of the
Yeah,
Rings, all sorts of
yeah.
stuff.
I know he was in a few Tim Burton movies here and there
Yeah,
too. So yeah,
very cool.
very, very cool indeed.
All right, so like I kind of mentioned before, this is your return visit to the show. So first of all,
Mhm.
thank you for making time to come back to talk to me.
Of course. Yeah, thanks
Very
for having me
excited.
back.
Absolutely. So since we've talked last, one thing I wanted to kind of chat about was you started a series called Sandman Sunday.
Oh, yes, yes.
Where did you come up with the idea for that, and what kind of inspired you to start something like that?
Yeah, so my Sandman Sunday challenge is a way for me to show my appreciation for this Neil Gaiman's Sandman series, which I've been a fan of for a very long time, and I have the complete run with some multiple copies,
Nice.
and I have some the error editions and the corrected editions that are out there of some of those books and just a huge fan of the series and all the companion pieces and spin-offs. Um, and uh, I was hanging around online, hanging around with
Yeah,
a lot of other people that were doing challenges, and stuff like that. And I was like, I want to do something that will keep me in check for like almost a year and a half, because there's 75 issues in the main run of Sandman. If I posted one weekly, that's 75 weeks. It's well over a year. It's basically a year and a half. And it's a way for me to stop talking about myself for at least one post. Or for one post a week. Because when
yeah,
you're a creator, it's always about me, 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 me. And I'm not knocking anyone, on doing
sure.
that because if you're not if you're not the one that's promoting you the most, you're doing something wrong.
That's true.
Um, and it's a struggle out there.
Yeah,
You got to hustle. or you can't count on other people to do it for you. So it's a way for me to be like, this is something else I'm interested in other than talking about myself. I like comics. I don't just make them. And who knows, maybe Neil Gaiman will be like, hey, that's cool that this guy's doing that. And follow me on Instagram or something. I don't know. But yeah, thank you for asking about that because that's a cool little thing I've done. I did my post today. I have a reminder on my phone to keep me in check too, to do
That's
my
awesome.
Sandman Sunday post. So yeah, something different other than the Jonathan Hedrick hour.
Yeah, and I totally get it. Like I don't know, it's been talked about before where, if you're not out promoting yourself and you're not your biggest cheerleader, it's going to be hard to find someone to help do that for you.
Oh yeah,
Um, and yeah, I mean, it's, as a creator myself in a different way, it seems like I'm always like, hey, follow my social media, listen to my show, subscribe to
yeah,
my YouTube. After a while, people are probably going to get sick of that. So you do
right.
kind of want to switch it up a little bit and add a little bit something extra in there. Plus, I mean, Sandman's always something I've wanted to get into. I mean,
Mhm.
back when I was a teenager, I read a little bit, but I didn't get super hard into it. But definitely, it's enough that it's made me kind of want to start looking into it myself. So it's very
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, great. And I'm the same way. When I was a kid first getting into comics, when Sandman was, a regular monthly title, I would
Yeah,
see that on the shelf and I just like that looks so cool, but I know my little unintelligent mind won't comprehend anything
yeah,
right now with that Vertigo
oh yeah,
logo on it. So I'm going to
for
keep on
sure.
reading my Robin and my Nightwing, and eventually, when I get to the appropriate intellectual level, I'll pick those up. And when I did, man, I was hooked.
Yeah,
I knew that was my jam, and it continues to be.
for sure. All right, so another thing I noticed that I wanted to kind of bring up was you recently posted, and this is something you did a while ago, but you recently posted about your trip to the Stephen King house.
Oh yeah,
It's kind of
yeah.
awesome. So I'd like to maybe spend a few minutes talking about that, like how that came about, how it was, kind of
Yeah.
what kind of stuff you experienced while you were there.
Yeah, so to make that Stephen King story a little longer than you probably want it to be, but so I was in a book called Vets and Pets. It's a nonfiction book about military veterans and animals that have helped them with their time in the service and post service time. And Barbara Bush, the former first lady, who passed away a few years ago, she did the forward of that book because she's she loved pets herself,
Mhm.
and obviously being a first lady, she's a patriot. So we were all of us in the book were invited to the Bush house that's in Kennebunk in Maine. So during that trip, I flew out to Maine, and I stopped at Bangor, Maine first. I flew into Bangor instead of Portland, and I spent a couple days there. And there's that's where Stephen King has his house in Maine. He also has one
Oh,
here in Florida as well. Um, so I was like, man, I really want to. I'm a huge Stephen King fan, huge.
sure.
Um, I wanted to do a Stephen King tour, but the funds were limited, time was limited. So I looked up on the phone a Yelp review on the Stephen King tours, and someone posted every place that they stopped at. And I Googled all those places, and in my rental car, I went to all those places
That's
instead of
awesome.
paying for the tour, and I just did the
Yeah.
tour myself. And they included like uh, places around town that were uh, they they weren't predominant in the movies, but they it was something that he took from his time living there and adapted it to the books. So that was really cool. And one of the stops was outside of his house, which is weird that his house has a Yelp review.
That is
But
crazy.
it is. But yeah, so I made a point to stop there, take some pictures. Other people were kind of, on the street taking pictures. A car actually left while we were there, but I'm sure they're used to it and all that stuff. But it was neat to be able. That's super cool of them to not have like someone pushing people away from taking pictures and stuff like that, because it's an awesome house. It's very
Yeah.
gothic, Victorian style. So yeah, that was a cool trip to Maine. I got to do all that Stephen King stuff, and I got to meet a former president and first lady at their house. So that was a great trip.
That is super cool. So is it like the house he's currently living in or like the house he grew up in?
From what I understand, it's the house. It's not the house he grew up in. I believe he still owns the house, and lives
Okay.
there. But I did hear something online, so take it that with a grain of salt, that it was up
Yeah.
for sale or something like that. But I do know that he has a place in Sarasota, Florida, because he's a Red Sox fan, and they do
Okay.
their spring training down there. So it's like a way to get out of North Maine when it's wintertime and come down here to Florida.
Mm,
So,
makes sense.
you know,
That's super cool.
yeah.
So now another thing I noticed you've kind of gotten into is you've been contributing to the Metal Ninja Dojo, the free comic
Yes.
creation education.
Yep.
Um, let's talk about kind of how that came about and how you come up with all of your ideas for that.
Yeah, so I've known Joel Rodriguez for several years now, who owns Metal Ninja Studios.
Mhm.
Um, we've worked on a few books together. He lettered Recount Preamble and The Space Cadet. Um, and when he discussed expanding Metal Ninja Studios into adding more um, branches of it, um, he put out a call for writers. So I said, hey, what's this about? And he gave me the gist of it about doing some educational blogs on creating comics, and I was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's another way for me to not talk about me. For me to put
Yeah.
something out there that other people can use. And yeah, so we did that for a few months. It's on hiatus right now. But yeah, I look forward to getting back into it in some capacity and sharing the knowledge that was so freely given to me. You know,
That's very cool. And
you know,
it's a nice resource to have for people who are wanting to, get into writing or get into even making comic books. Because I know,
right?
I kind of attempted something like that a couple of years ago where I just on Facebook, I was like, okay, I'm friends with tons of comic book creators, what's some advice that, you could give to help me get into comics? And
Yeah,
the most, the post that I got, the reply that I got the most often was Google it.
yeah. I and yeah, that sounds familiar. And there's been plenty of times where I've wanted to say the same thing to someone, but to be fair, a lot of this information can be found online. You
Right.
can, how do I write a script? Well, I Googled, sample comic book scripts and found samples of comic book scripts written by pros, and I was like, okay, that's what the format looks like. I
Yeah.
went to a public library and checked out books on specifically on comic book writing. And if that they didn't have it, they were able to ship it to me, and I didn't have to go on Amazon Prime and buy a comic book writing book.
Yeah.
And I found one I really liked, and I kept on checking it out until I eventually bought a used copy on Amazon Prime because I was tired of bringing it back just to check it out again.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's free resources out there, and you know that's the intention of it. It's to not always say, hey, we want something from you. It's hey, this is what we can give you. Try to give as much as you ask for too.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I do too.
Mhm.
So speaking of Metal Ninja Studios, you are partnered up with them once again for your brand new book that's on Kickstarter right now called Brackish. Just read it this morning. It's a fantastic book.
Oh,
Very
thank you.
excited for it. Absolutely. So, For those that don't know, why don't we take a little bit to talk about Brackish, how you came up with the idea for it, and kind of just how things tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah. So my elevator pitch is TV's Yellowstone meets a modern Romeo and Juliet in the Florida swamp.
Okay.
That's the premise and setting. If I was riding with you on an elevator. Um, More lengthier pitch is there's been these two families in connected to this Florida swamp, the Tappers and the Saltzman. They've had a blood feud for centuries, and only about 100 years ago did they have a truce where the Tappers stayed on the freshwater side, the Saltzmans stayed on the salt side, and the brackish area in between was neutral ground that no one really touched. Um, Fast forward to modern times when uh, the kids from each side of those families cross paths and fall in love, and then it snowballs. The dominoes fall, and the old wounds reopen. Secrets that were swept underneath the rug come back out, and things get bloody once again. But now it's modern times because this truce was done back in like Prohibition days. Now things are how they are in this world, and it's going to be a little more bloodier in the swamp than it was the last time. So that's the premise of it. It's grounded in reality. That's why I like to stress the most. This is we don't have that many comics on the shelves like this nowadays. It's usually
Yeah.
superhero, sci-fi, horror, something supernatural, something far-fetched, which is great. It's great escapism, but
Yeah.
um, it's nice to read a story sometimes and be like, wow, this could actually happen, or this looks familiar.
Yeah, for sure. So when you originally came up with the idea for Brackish, is this something you've kind of had cooking for a while? What kind of helped inspire to kind of bring this story to life?
Yeah, so a few years ago, I was invited by a publisher that it was a creator-owned publisher, but they pay for the artwork, and so
Okay.
they scout out talent, and they approached me to send them pitches, um, and I think my second pitch was Brackish to them, and I gave them a page and a half. They passed on it because they had already done a Romeo and Juliet story, and they didn't want to, as they said, revisit that well. Um,
Sure.
and that their Romeo and Juliet story was set in outer space, and um, if you're looking for it, you'll find it in the dollar bins. So
Okay.
maybe that's why they didn't want to revisit that well. But
Sure.
and now that publisher doesn't exist, so uh,
Yeah.
it is what it is. But that when I write a pitch, it's not something I'm just trying to. It's not fodder to try to get a job and then start writing. It's because
Yeah.
it was something I'm passionate about, something that I know I can um, expand upon beyond that page and a half pitch. Because the worst thing that could happen is I give them an excellent idea and I don't know how to write it afterwards. It's like
Yeah.
applying for like lying on your resume and then you getting the job and being like, oh no, no, I actually have to perform surgery.
Yeah.
So Brackish has been cooking in my head for a while. And then the beginning of last year, beginning of 2023, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make this one my own. I had already was wrapping up other projects, so my schedule opened up for me to put funds in that area. And yeah, I've been working on it ever since, to the point where there's artwork done on issue 3, and
Oh,
I'm
nice.
currently writing issue 4. So and also it grew from what was intended to be a 5-issue miniseries to what I'm thinking, maybe 2 volumes of five
Nice.
issues each, if not more than that. And I even cooked up one or two like prequel one shots that I love prequel one shots as like a good
Yeah.
little filler in between volumes. So yeah, it's if it's received well, there's going to be a lot more Brackish if people want it.
Very cool. So,
Mhm.
we mentioned it's on Kickstarter right now. Is there anything you can tell us about the Kickstarter? Any kind of cool
Oh
things that
yeah.
are unlocked already?
Well, thanks to Metal Ninja Studios, who's running the campaign, they added a lot of awesome reward tiers that I wouldn't have been able to handle myself if I was running it solo. Um, so like we have plenty of metal covers for for the fans of the metal cover collectors. But
Sure.
one thing I really thought was cool they added on was a um, alligator skin cover. Now
Yeah.
it's not real alligator skin, so don't report us to
Yeah, yeah.
the animal rights or anything like that. But it's basically a alligator skin graphic and with UV coating on it to give it that texturized feel. And I think that's pretty unique
Yeah,
and
it looks
very
really
like
cool.
on theme with the story.
Sure.
And then something that was announced today was the tackle box. So there's a tier with an actual collectible box that looks like a tackle box with various other exclusive metal covers, an in-universe themed coaster, a mini print. So we have all kinds of options from people that just want digital rewards to like the high-end collectible stuff and everything in between.
That's very cool. Um, so I was gonna ask if, it sounds like you've got quite a bit planned for this if it ends up going past
Mhm.
issue 1. So it's something that you could foresee for, a pretty long running series, nothing for like a short term.
No, yeah, I would prefer to if it was up to me, I would love to do two campaigns a calendar year for this book for several years, something that people could, really rely upon. Because I back Kickstarters too. I've supported over
Yeah.
200 Kickstarters. I'm a super backer. Um, but there's a lot of just issue ones out there and nothing more. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of one shots which I've done plenty of myself.
Mhm.
You don't see too many like ongoing or long term runs of titles on Kickstarter. I think we want more of that. I think we need more of that
Absolutely.
as um, the comic book readers and collectors are start to embrace crowdfunding more. They're going to want to see that turnover more. So I think that's what I like to do with Brackish, and that be like my crowdfunding ongoing series.
That's very cool. So definitely everyone who's watching this or listening to this, make sure you go check it out. There's lots of cool stuff. Metal Ninja has hooked him up with a bunch of really cool extras, and
Mhm.
I'm sure there's more to come. So definitely check it out.
Yeah.
Campaign lasts for about another week or so. I think it
Mhm.
ends. We're recording this on the 19th, so I believe it's got at least another full week and then a partial
Yeah.
week after that. So it's
Yeah. May 29th is the last day, the morning of May 29th. So
so we've
get
got
on it.
about a little more than 2 weeks left. So definitely
Mhm.
check it out for sure.
Mhm.
Now, after this Kickstarter's over, what do you have next that you can talk about that you're gonna be doing?
Well, I can't give too much details out, about this project, but it fell in my lap and they needed it done um, before the end of June. So I hate to be so vague, but because the ink is still very wet on this project, but
Okay.
people will see what it is mid-June, which is pretty
Okay.
fast in comic book uh, time
Yeah.
times, you know. So
Mhm.
last weekend, I banged down a 10-page script for a publisher that said that we need this to go to print next month. I'm like, all right, let's do it.
Wow.
And they hired my wife, Francesca Fantini, for artwork on it too. So she had, while I'm writing the script, she wrapped up a project, and now that's what she's working on. So, we had a comic book come out last month called Can I Scream, and now people are already going to get another Fantini Hedrick project out in the world next month. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
can't the publisher hasn't announced it, so it's just safe. It's better safe for me to not get too many details. But in a few more weeks, everyone will know what it is for sure.
Fair enough.
You know,
So, and I want to say your wife is an incredible artist. How,
thank you.
and like you mentioned, you've had a lot of chances to work together with her on
Mhm.
some other projects. How has that been, being able to have the chance to work with your wife on stuff?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's great to be able to bounce things off of each other and just be able to, not have to send an email and then have to wait to get the email back. And
Yeah.
then then you send your reply and you wait for them to get it a day later because you're working on two different continents and different time zones and blah blah blah. So yeah, that's a real big perk with it. Plus, it's nice in this particular project that we were asked to do last minute. It's nice because we don't have to fund this project. We're actually getting paid for it.
That's cool.
Her and I, we did Can Ice Cream together. We didn't crowdfund that. All that was done upfront. And then we handed it off to the publisher. So it's like this time the product is being financed. So this is that's what you really want as a creator of
Yeah,
books.
for sure. Usually for final thoughts, I like to kind of get whoever I'm talking to give some advice on,
Mhm.
creative advice. Since I've kind of had you done that before, I
Yeah.
want to kind of change it a little bit.
Okay.
So this time I want to see what advice would you give to creators about running a Kickstarter?
Yeah. There's so much advice to give about running Kickstarter. I could probably ramble on for a while. Um, I would say if it's your first Kickstarter, lower your expectations. Uh, don't go in there trying to get something 5,000, a $5,000 funding goal. Um, uh, you could still get $5,000, but set
Sure.
your goal lower. What I like to tell people is some money is better than no money. If you
Yeah.
have a $5,000 funding goal and you only raise $4,999, you get zero money on Kickstarter for that. But if your funding goal was $500 and you raise $4,999 and you get that. So, and I think people, I try to explain it to a few people like, no, I can do 5,000. All right, cool. I hope you do. And some of them have. Um, but that's one thing I'd like to point out. Also, be
Yeah.
prepared, um, be organized. Do pre-launch is more important than it ever has been in like the past 5 years. Build up that pre-launch following way ahead of time because email is king right now. Social media is dying unless you want to pay for everything to being promoted. They are manipulating these posts. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's truth. Then
Yeah.
they'll say they are admitting to it that they are slowing down people's engagement and you being visible on social media. So email is important. So those followers are going to get the email from Kickstarter when you launch. They're going to remind them that they haven't backed yet. If they haven't backed, they're going to let them know when your campaign ends and all that stuff. That's
Yep.
crucial. That's like having an extra person in your corner, which you need.
For
So,
sure.
I mean, the uh, Kickstarter will show you where these backers came from to a certain extent. They'll say this one came from Facebook, this one came from email, this one came from Twitter, this one was a direct search, and so forth. I see hardly any on any of my campaigns, any backers from Twitter, maybe one or two, and then zero usually from Instagram. And that's because of how Instagram works.
Yeah.
It's so many clicks from Instagram to get to that, and that's how it's designed.
Yeah.
They designed it that way. Facebook, you get a little bit more because there's less clicks to get to the campaign page. But email and direct search is the number one. So make it easy for someone to search for your project too. Don't have some bizarre spelling, word, title. Have something in there that's gonna pop up easier when you search for it. Like, don't spell something with a K instead of a C, like Mortal Kombat spelled with a K.
Yeah.
And do your research. Has anything else, especially comic book related, already been crowdfunded on this platform? Search for items, type in what you think you're going to title your project and see what else pops up. So I don't know, I could go on and on. There's so many tips I could
Oh,
give Chris.
for sure,
Could do
dude.
a whole lecture, and I'm just I won't even call myself an expert.
Yeah,
I have some experience, run about 10 campaigns, um, but there's a lot of people that are doing it much better than me that could give a lot more advice. But that's just some, you know, off the cuff um, advice right there. I hope some people will take in consideration if they're listening to this.
for sure. And any advice is good advice, really. And,
Yeah.
like you said, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely getting harder and harder to get that reach on Facebook and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that because I've seen a lot of times where I don't even hear about someone's Kickstarter until
Yeah.
either it's like the last day or it's ended. So, it's definitely
Right.
happening. And like you said, you don't really get that visibility unless you pay for it. And sometimes even when you pay for it, that's kind of like
Yeah.
50-50 that's even gonna do what they say
Right.
it's going to. It's just them wanting to take your money and saying, sure, maybe
Yeah.
we'll get some reach for you, but there's a chance that it's gonna do just as good, you know,
Mm-hmm.
either way. So that's some good
Yeah.
advice
The struggle is real.
for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, now, we're at the point of the show where I want to give you a chance to plug yourself. Where can people keep up to date with you on stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Where can people find, when your next project comes out, where can they hear about it? And, let's kind of give them a refreshers where they can go to check out Brackish.
Yeah, so I like to lead everyone to my website, jonathanhedrickcomics.com. It's a great hub to get to all my other things. There's links to everything from my website. So from my website, you can go to my Substack and sign up and subscribe to my Substack, which is I really would prefer people to do because back to what we said about email, you sign up on my Substack, even if you don't have the Substack app, you'll get the email newsletter. So that won't get lost in the ether of social media.
Yeah.
But there's all the links from my social media are on my website. There's even links to my work on my publishers' websites on their web stores from there. So you can go to my website and go find a link for Can I Scream on KeenSpot's website, or Quicksand on Scout's website, or Dream Master on Black Box's website. So you can branch off from there. And like I said, you can sign up for my email newsletter. Um, I occasionally have things. I really pulled back my web store and narrowed it down, minimalized it, but occasionally I do have things for sale there. But yeah, um, sign up for my Substack, be on my email newsletter. I do have a Facebook group too. So that's Jonathan Hedrick Comics as well. And that's a great way to fight the algorithms.
Yeah.
That way is to be in a creator's Facebook group. Um, Eventually everyone's going to have a Facebook group. And then what do we do after that? But yeah, so that's about it. JonathanHedrickComics.com.
And you got a YouTube now too, I saw.
Yeah, I mean, I am terrible. I have no idea how to video edit. But once I realized I could create a reel on Facebook, download that and upload it to YouTube, I was like, okay, maybe I can add a little beef up my YouTube channel and just have another platform where there might another eye might be able to catch something. If they're missing it on one platform, maybe they'll catch it on the other. Um,
There
and I
you
have a lot of trailers for my previous work. Some of my other titles, I have those uploaded. So I'm slowly trying to build up. I'm not trying to become a YouTuber or
go.
monetize that whatsoever.
Yeah.
Just trying to have get more eyes on the projects.
Definitely. And like you said, with social media not, working as well as it used to,
Hmm.
definitely that's a good way to reach out in a
Yeah.
different avenue because this channel for this show is I've just recently made a YouTube channel specifically
Mm.
just for this show.
Yeah.
And
Why
it's
not?
it's yeah, exactly. And it's crazy how much of a response it's getting there. So
Yeah.
it's very
Got
cool.
to follow where the eyes look. You know.
There you go. It's
Yeah.
always you got to stay up on the trend so you can, make sure you get seen everywhere you can, for sure.
Yep. Absolutely.
All right. Well, to find this interview, to find all sorts of other nerdy news all the nerdy news you can handle, check out our website at geek-network.com. Also, this show, Fueled by Weird, is now part of the Metal Ninja Studios family. So make sure you check out metalninjastudios.com. It's your one-stop shop for all your comic book making needs. You can find Geek Network on Twitter and Instagram at GeeksAZ. You can find us on Facebook at Geek Network. You can find Fueled by Weird on Instagram and Facebook. And like I mentioned, we're part of the Geek Network / Metal Ninja Studios family. And this show is part of the Geek Network podcast syndicate. Um, a whole network of shows. Go check it out. Um, you can send me an email at fueledbyweird@gmail.com. Let me know questions, comments, any kind of stuff you want to talk about. Shoot me an email there. Pizza Force by Polygon Horizon is the music for this show. Go check them out on Bandcamp. They're a great band. The logos for the show are by my friends Chris Chandler and Mike Belcher. Great comic book guys. Go check them out on all their social medias. And if you like the show, please leave a review and tell your friends because word of mouth is our friend. And remember, kids, to embrace the things that feel your weird and always geek responsibly. Jonathan, thanks so much for meeting with me today.
Yeah, thank you, Chris.
Absolutely.